Okay, I'm gonna call this planning committee meeting to order. Do I need to say the date or anything other?
You want to.
than that? We are at January 23rd, 10:30 a.m. this Thursday. Hello. Right on time.
Do a roll call.
Yeah, if you want to.
Okay. So. Just for like, hey, I'm the chair and committee members.
Yeah.
You can say like, I'm Chair Rebecca Rathmel, Councilmember Kavanaugh is present.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm Rebecca Rathmel, District 6, new planning committee chair for 2025, currently present. Councilmember Hotchkiss,
Present.
Thank you for being a committee member.
I'm on the committee.
Councilmember Kavanaugh,
Present,
my gratitude to you as well for being a committee member.
glad to be here.
Tito, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everybody.
And who are you?
I'm the Assistant Director of the Planning Department.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here. Sam.
Hi, Sam, Deputy City Clerk taking notes.
Okay. So Tito, if we could start with context on this RL. I know it was supposed to be presented late last year, moved into this year. My understanding is that it's requested amendments largely for the purposes of public health.
Yep.
Could you take it from there?
Yeah, so we're trying to address public health from a zoning standpoint by addressing two land uses that are of concern. One being gas stations, the other being tobacco retailers. They're concerned for pretty different reasons, but both of them have potential public health impacts. So start with gas stations. The intro to the text amendment that was provided with the RL goes a little more in depth in this, but basically they have the potential to contaminate groundwater through their underground storage tanks. They can generate runoff mixed with spilled fuel, which contaminates groundwater again, but also surface water. And they can release harmful vapors into the air, which obviously presents a hazard to human health and the environment. And I can share the literature on that if that's helpful. They also, when a new gas station is established, you typically will have an increase in traffic, light, and noise at that location, which also has sort of secondary negative impacts on the surroundings. Yeah.
I don't doubt certainly any of the public health impacts. Tito, what is the sense on why now for the amendments?
Well, really what prompted this was the proposal for a gas station next to a residential area.
Where was that?
That is on Main Street. That actually made it through. It made it through the process before we can move forward with this. But
The old Binghamton fluorescent location.
correct. Yeah, it was just the Binghamton fluorescent.
The old
location.
Binghamton fluorescent.
It was just our department's view that, you know, it's not a great location of being next to a residential area. There are a number of gas station options already on Main Street, and that it was sort of an unnecessary, you know, from a commercial standpoint, and it would have negative impacts on the surrounding area. And more importantly, that the code currently and the guidelines that the planning commission are working with currently wouldn't really give them the tools to say no to that gas station as long as they were meeting all of the other, you know, considerations of site plan review. And so that's what prompted it. And then we thought, you know, if we're looking at a public health legislation, what is another land use related public health issue that we can maybe tack onto this? And we already have a buffer for tobacco retailers, and we just thought that that could be strengthened as well as part of this legislation. We did think about other land uses. We couldn't really think of anything really practical to address in this legislation. So we settled on these two.
I think asked you this before, but, does it affect the gas stations that are already within the boundaries?
No, maybe it's a good time to talk about the map. So the map shows the potential changes. The hashed areas show the buffers in which a new gas station could not be built under the proposed rules. The map also shows existing gas stations, existing hospitals, and existing schools, and then all their respective buffers around them. Any green parcels that are not in a buffer represent parcels where a gas station could be built going forward. So the existing gas stations wouldn't be affected. And I do think also the map does a good job showing that every neighborhood has adequate coverage in terms of fuel stations, and that neighborhoods where you could argue that they lack easy access are the places where a new gas station would be allowed. So all the way at the top of the north side, and then parts of the south side.
I think you missed one,
Yeah. Which one are you thinking? On
The-
the north side?
yeah.
Cause I think you mentioned.
Oh, are you saying in the future? Yeah, okay, my bad.
Wait, you,
No, but the yellow spots are the ones where, I mean, current.
Yeah, the orange parcels
right,
are current gas stations.
but you mentioned that this map didn't capture gas stations that abut residential currently. Or it
Yes,
does.
yeah, I don't have one of these.
Oh,
Thought I brought four.
Cause I
Oh.
think I'm not seeing a gas station represented on like corner of Conklin and Tompkins. I mean, the streets aren't super labeled, so I might just be missing the street, but
So this would be Tompkins.
it's right on Conklin and Tompkins.
Okay.
There's,
We can go back and look, and look to see if we missed
So
anything.
you haven't overcounted, so. Sure.
And then the one on the north side is like right on top of Roosevelt. I think they have the same like parcel boundary, the gas station.
Yeah,
The school, see that on here.
we'll go back and
Yeah.
try to make sure we get all the gas stations, but, even with lacking some gas stations, I think it shows that there's adequate gas coverage. And it also shows that in some cases, particularly like Main Street, a little bit north of Main and northeast of downtown, you have gas stations in clusters, which, again, the research shows increased health risks exponentially when you have that cluster. And then the last thing to consider there is from an environmental justice perspective is that the two areas where you have these clusters of gas stations are lower income areas, and so they're disproportionately affecting more vulnerable residents in those areas. So
but existing would essentially be grandfathered in.
existing would be grandfathered in if at any point the gas station closed for 12 months or more, then that use would kind of go away and it could no longer be a gas station.
I think my primary concern with that on the south side is that there's currently a gas station directly across from the former Weiss location.
Okay,
And it's, I mean, believe it or not, an area that a lot of families are going to for food supplies.
okay,
Not at all ideal, but it's what exists. And I mean, I understand the onus and intention of this legislation. I just
Yeah.
want to point that out as if that does close and can't come back in that use, we're
and that's,
going to be impact access.
is that this one here?
Yeah.
Okay, so if that.
No,
No.
further to the right.
I don't think,
Is
That
it this?
one, right? That's right across the street from Weiss parcel.
Oh, yeah, okay.
yes, that one. Mhm.
So that one in particular would not be allowed to reopen because of the school, but it could reopen to the west of the school. you know, I guess that does increase the distance, for the folks on the, eastern part of the south side, but
which is already the challenge. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that that needs, I mean, that's its own challenge and
Right,
issue.
right.
So I'm pointing it
Would
out
they
as a
be able to
concern.
apply for a variance in that situation?
They could, I think the way we wrote it in though was that it would. Similar to tobacco, the appeal would go to city council, not to the zoning board for a variance.
I think that would be all right. I mean,
Mhm.
we recognize, I mean, it would be the specific situation where you're recognizing that. Gosh, this is the previous location and. You know, and whatever environmental impacts are probably
Yeah.
long standing and. Probably better to have one reopen there than try and engineer a new one
Right.
half a mile away.
So, yeah,
I'm okay with that option.
if somebody wanted to reopen it within 12 months, then
it's still the
they
grandfather
have to
still
do
stands,
nothing.
Right.
If it's closed for 2 years, let's say, and they want to reopen it. But they can't, they could appeal to city council, who at that point would look at things like food insecurity and things like that and considering that.
Do you know what the? Law is when one of these shut down as far as tank removal and remediation and monitoring?
There's nothing locally that I know of. I think that's regulated by the federal government, though. When they shut down, they have to sort of mothball the site in a certain way.
Is that, I think on the south side, I think of the old head station on the corner of.
Right.
Conklin and and
Mhm.
that site,
I was
it's been
thinking
sitting
of
there,
that one too.
you know. And that was a situation where the Walgreens. That used to be a gas station as well, across the street, it was the kitty corner, and there was a number. Or that Rabbit was still down the street, right?
Mhm.
So you had these clusters, and I mean, we're not. We're not really adding any more people, I mean, it's, do we need more gas stations?
Some of the literature I was reading is suggesting that
Like, how much
Gas
cannibalization
stations.
just happened?
Yeah,
It's
gas-
like,
right.
all the pharmacies in the last.
There are less gas stations being built and there's I guess part of that is EV demand. Part of that is large retailers, including gas, like BJ's and things like that, but there are less standalone gas stations being built anyway. But what we want to do is when they are built, try to make them go to a location that is least harmful to residents. So that's gas stations.
Are we? Able to consider, I'm just throwing this out there. Buffers that are. Out, taking into consideration gas stations that are outside the limits of the city of Binghamton, but the buffers might fall over into the city of Binghamton.
We could do
I'm
that.
thinking, for example. Over in town Dickinson, right here on, I don't know if that would actually reach over, but just the ones that are, there's no gas stations over here, but there's.
Right.
There's right off the highway, there's right here by Old Friend, it's Old Friend Street, yeah.
I-
There's I don't know if that is useful or,
It's something that
Not-
may be useful to council, just illustrating. If you have concerns about these people, where they're gonna get their gas, we can show that there's one in the town of Dickinson or whatever the case may be.
and right over in the city here.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
From a zoning standpoint, I'd have to talk to Corp Council about whether we could use a land use in a different municipality. In one of these sort of proximity regulations. I don't know that we can or we can't, but that we've never done anything like that before.
Be a cool question to know the answer to,
I'm just looking at the lane, I read it pretty quickly, but it says it goes to planning commission first. And then. City council.
Yeah, so they would go to the planning commission, and then the planning commission. Could review the project as a site plan review. And also give a recommendation to council. Or they could just give the recommendation to council, really depends on the application, but as far as that text is concerned, the purpose is they give a recommendation to council. And then council makes the decision. that's how the appeals for the tobacco retailers near schools work. And we've done it before and it worked fairly well.
Would that make number one review by the planning commission and number two common council approval?
Correct.
So, because it's switched.
Common council approval within 30 days.
Unless I'm misunderstanding. It sounds like you're saying step one is that it goes to planning commission. And then those recommendations are sent to council. But this would appear that it goes to council
Right.
and then is reviewed by the commission. Unless I'm
No, it's
missing a step.
just the lettering, or the numbering seems backward.
That's
But
what I,
but it's
yeah,
not reviewed by, so before consideration of the common council, an applicant, so it's just. You should just switch those two paragraphs. For clarity.
Yeah. We'll make that two, one. And then three stays where it is.
So I think the process is right, it's just confusingly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
ordered.
place. Related but not entirely on. Topic, this 13-page environmental assessment form.
Mhm.
And then the mapping summary, are those just generally required to be a part of all of what
Yeah,
you're proposing?
yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion on the fuel location aspects?
I think it's something we probably should have been on top of. Years ago. Better now than not now.
Second best day to plant a tree is today, you know?
Yeah, the first best day is 20 years ago,
Yeah.
right? That's how it goes, yeah.
Yeah.
True for a lot of things. Okay, can we move on to the tobacco piece, Stephen?
Yep, so, obviously, everybody knows tobacco use and vaping are leading causes of preventable diseases and deaths in the United States. And a high density of retailers has been linked to greater tobacco and vaping use in areas. Here in Binghamton, an additional concern with smoke shops in particular, because this addresses any tobacco retailer, but also specifically smoke shops, is that multiple smoke shops have been confirmed to be selling cannabis illegally. And there are others that are under investigation, and that's sort of an additional public health issue because unregulated cannabis, there's no quality control there, there's no testing of whether it has additives or other harmful ingredients. So that's an additional public health issue with some of these smoke shops that are committing these violations.
Could you, since that's being represented, could you include that explicitly in the public health context before the amendment piece?
Okay, the
I had
specific
read that.
locations,
No,
Okay.
I assumed that there was a link in terms of the cannabis aspect that you just mentioned. It's just not explicit in the public health piece. And if that's an aspect of concern with this, I would like to see it linked, like identified in here.
like in this intro to the legislation? Okay, all right. And so we're looking to limit the proliferation of these retailers, especially near sensitive uses like schools. And so we think that the following changes would help reduce the concentration of tobacco retailers and at the same time limit exposure to tobacco advertising for people that are attempting to quit, and for minors who haven't started yet. So right now you can't have a tobacco retailer within 500 feet of a school. We would increase that radius to 1,000 feet. We would define smoke shops as a distinct use and only allow in certain districts with a special use permit. Right now, tobacco retailer is categorized as general retail, which is permitted by right in pretty much all commercial zoning districts, so there's no real sort of scrutiny or public input there.
Is,
Um,
is this map representing 500 feet or 1,000? Their radius.
1,000. Okay, that's the proposed new
Okay.
buffer.
Could you, and if you're gonna get to this, just say so, but could you also expound on the change that includes liquor and beer stores?
Yes, yeah, I will,
Okay,
I'll get
thank-
right to that, and Councilman Hotchkiss. To your point, that is showing a 500-foot buffer around schools, so we need to fix that.
Yeah, and. I mean, I don't know if the hospital changes or not. Yeah, and hospitals.
So we'll
Wait.
fix that.
Wait.
Express it within the distance. Yeah, the hospital shouldn't even be on there for tobacco. Um,
Downtown center count as an educational institution.
we did not do colleges, but we could.
The
Is the
library.
focus minors?
Yeah, that's really the focus is children.
How about the library?
How about what?
How about the library?
The library?
Library, you probably have to add in as a government building,
Yeah, we,
craft language around that.
the question whether that's considered specifically a educational institution in the zoning code, that the answer to that is no, it's just like a public institution.
High school is so saturated.
Yeah. And part of that is the advertising too, is the tobacco retailers tend to have a lot of tobacco ads on their windows, and some of them are attention getting, flashing signs and things like that, which some other municipalities do address in their sign ordinance. That's something that we could consider adding.
I mean, our sign
Yeah.
ordinance is. I, almost all of these stores. That it would fall are already violating the window coverage portion
Right.
of our sign ordinance as it is.
Right.
Like you can. They could be. Going
Yeah.
after in the status quo. I
They
mean,
could, yeah. I think adding additional charges to the violation can result in additional fines, and so it'll. Because right now, if you get a $500 fine. Once in 2 years. That's kind of the cost of doing business. You're gonna keep the signs up, if you think that they're driving business. So adding that charge, if we wanted to amend the sign ordinance also would result in a bigger fine for violators. But, okay, so we added the density regulations for smoke shops, and convenience stores that sell smoking products. And then as far as the liquor stores, the purpose of that one is that liquor stores currently are permitted by right in all commercial zoning districts, as they're also considered general retail, similar to smoke shops. Obviously, there are public health impacts to alcohol consumption and advertising as well. So we just thought that having an additional step for liquor stores by having them go to the planning commission will allow the public to give some input if it's locating in their neighborhood, and would add a little scrutiny to that.
Would it be similar to, so for existing liquor stores? Would they have to apply?
No, anything,
Special use or just another grandfathered in?
yeah, that would, an existing liquor store would be grandfathered in. It would be considered going forward a legal, non-conforming
Okay.
convenience store rather than a legal conforming general retail store.
Okay.
But any existing liquor store would be allowed to stay where it is.
Same rule, 12 months, blah, 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 applies, right?
Correct, yeah, if the use is vacated,
I'm a little less concerned about access to alcohol versus access to food, but with the closure.
I would just say, some people do have a physical dependency on alcohol, but
Sure.
like,
Mhm,
is what
That's
maybe
fair.
there's some nuance.
No, that's fair. That is
Yeah.
fair.
and then, that's why with the alcohol, we're not putting in any buffers or anything like that, we're just making it not permitted by right. Um,
I don't at all mind the opportunity to have a community conversation, like that special use permit, I
Yeah.
can appreciate.
let's see. So that sort of sums up the tobacco retailer part of it. If you have specific questions from the text, I can address those.
Same with switching 1 and 2.
Okay,
Or 1024. I believe.
one thing that I was thinking about yesterday with the convenience store thing is that convenience stores would also be subject to these buffers if they're selling tobacco. And then to your point, that can affect people's access to food, even though it's not quality food. So, if that's a concern, we could do something with the definition of convenience store, because where are we? The definition of convenience store currently, what's that?
If we're missing a page in it. For that.
Right, convenience stores right in the, after the
Oh, yes, yep,
intro.
yeah, so it's right there.
Oh, okay.
So to be considered a convenience store versus a food or a grocery outlet, the specific term is retail food sales. You have to meet these criteria. It's under 4,000 square feet, operate 12 or more hours a day, sell alcohol. And so actually, I already put it in there, sorry. So the facility sells tobacco, vape, and other smoking products. So what we would do is that to be defined as a convenience store, sorry, we could change the definition of convenience store so that if you're selling fresh food, you're not considered a convenience store, and so you're not subject to this buffer. So you could be a convenience store in every other way, but if you're selling fresh produce or fresh meat or dairy or whatever, you're not subject to this buffer.
That makes it effectively
What?
ineffective.
It will reduce the effectiveness of it, but the truth is that a lot of these convenience stores do not sell fresh food, so it'd be a way to encourage them.
So
You
any
could do-
convenience store except Snap is carrying enough fresh produce. Bread, dairy, enough variety of fresh vegetables to be federally considered the Snap retailer. So
Okay,
they're gonna wave that in your face and say, I sell fresh.
okay,
Which, I mean, again, though, when we have so, particularly in this food desert, when we have so many families who are getting their bread, their milk.
Oh, I know, I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying that this is not really doing,
so
if you're trying to do
the
anything,
fresh
this is
food
not.
carrot would not work because
Probably
they
not.
already have enough fresh food. To,
Okay.
So yeah, so if you went by and looked at
So
all of
what
these other
would-
spots, and if they're saying that we accept EBT, they have a license from the federal government that's saying. That when they come in and they inspect and take pictures and, you have to prove that you're selling that many, enough SKUs and number of items that.
yeah. So I know.
Anyways, that's just, I'm just,
That's if we're concerned about this tobacco selling convenience store buffer hurting people's access to food. That's something that we could maybe try to address through zoning, or just kind of accept that it's something that is beyond the scope of zoning that we need to work on as a city through some other means to get fresh food retailers
Yeah,
in
I
some
think
of
it's
these areas.
likely the latter. I
Yeah.
do appreciate that there's still that variance option.
Yeah,
Because I think if something's brought to city council that represents expanding access to food products,
right.
it's a reasonable
Right,
consideration.
and council, or the planning commission, because they would need a special use permit too, but, either agency could require as a condition of approval that, you know, a certain percentage of square footage be dedicated to fresh food.
Yeah.
And then that's something it's a number, you know, it's 20% of the gross floor area that the zoning officer can go in and say, this meets it or doesn't, and then cite them if they're not. That's on a case by case.
You're wobbling, Robert, but you're not saying any words. What?
I mean. It's very arbitrary, you know. 30 pack of beer takes up a lot of space, you know, that, you know. I Put a lot of. Tomatoes and onions, potatoes in the space of a penny. I don't know if
And
flurry
you're
is
comfortable
fair.
admitting that we're not going to be able to control every aspect of the outcome or attempts
You know,
to get through a loophole.
and there's already, so. Your off premises. Your off premises beer and cider license requires. That more than 50% of the floor space be non. Alcohol already. Which some of the downtown places that ran into problems and probably still have issues. So we're trying to open mostly beer stores that can't do it. Violates your license. The exception would be Class B licenses, which I think maybe in the city is maybe only Beer Depot. I think that's maybe the only one in the city right now.
Tito, for the tobacco piece in particular, are you aware of community conversations or conversations with individuals in the community that have already occurred that were part of the onus of this?
For when the 500-foot rule was implemented?
For the tobacco, like all of the tobacco pieces? Because if I understood your intro correctly, the gas station piece is where this started, and then identifying an alternative public health piece to support the tobacco sales aspect came in. Are you aware of individual or community conversations that?
Not current ones, but there was an extensive sort of public input process, and there was a good amount of back and forth when the original buffer was put into place, which was maybe like 9 or 10 years ago. And that was,
Is that? I don't know how far back the stuff is archived. I would be interested in that. I mean, 10 years ago is
Yeah.
10 years ago, but I'm curious what folks were bringing up then.
Retail, I'm just trying to give concrete examples. So, Old Barn Market's probably under 4,000 square feet, probably doesn't operate more than 12 hours a day, it doesn't have beer. So they put a retail food stand.
correct.
Some of the halal markets that have opened. Under 4,000 square feet. Don't have a liquor license, might operate more than 12 hours, but still be retail food.
It would be either retail food or general retail, really depending on sort of what their inventory looks like, but it would not be a convenience store if it does not meet all these criteria.
Hmm.
And convenience stores are limited where, you know, in terms of zoning districts where they're allowed. Retail food sales are allowed almost everywhere. That's commercial.
I have any additional questions? Do you have? Anybody?
No, I'm good.
Any thoughts?
Many thoughts, but they're still coalescing here. I think this, I mean, overall, this is probably a a good step, but it's also. The bust that happened that Monday on the south side. On Mitchell Ave.
Mhm.
Alright. So. I mean. These, the sort of place that we're ostensibly targeting is already very targetable under. Current. Law. They're doing all the illegal things already. I don't know if these tools are even the tools that would get used necessarily.
I think what this would do is upfront, when they apply to establish the business, it sort of controls at least where they're located and the number of them. What they do once they're open, we can't control, but you know, this would be the difference between having 25 smoke shops in violation versus having maybe 5 because of the proximity and buffers.
That's why I'm gonna make. You know. I think the case for. Smoke shops in particular is pretty. Persuasive. I think we're getting a little dicier when we get the retail food sales versus convenience, you know. Like. It literally might not be profitable to open. Food only store.
I mean, I know when the North Side Deli was opening, that that was like their case for getting the tobacco permit. It's like they can. That's the only way that they'll like be able to stay in business. Is if
I mean, I
they also sell tobacco with everything else.
My business historically, it's changed actually a little bit. I used to like the rule of thumb was 30% tobacco, 30% beer, 30% everything else. We don't have a full deli, so the places that are doing full deli, you know, food service are probably doing more in that, and the margins are better.
It's a really fair point to make, I think. And if like a public health concern, certainly commendable, unintended consequence on communities that are largely disproportionately impacted already. Not so commendable.
You know, I will say that this does not ban convenience stores that sell tobacco. It just
Requires special use.
requires a special use permit and introduces this buffer. So there are still locations where they could locate. Much less of the city, but all these green locations that are not in the buffer would allow new convenience stores with tobacco or new smoke shops. Or, you know, you could sell food, alcohol, be open 10 hours, sell lotto. You know, you still have options. You just can't check all of those boxes.
Right.
And be within this buffer.
And how good. So there was a store that's on the corner of Oak and Leroy. It's down the street from me. They had to get a special use permit to go in there. Perhaps they had to get a variance to go in there because of they weren't neighborhood commercial, it was a grandfather in non-conforming use. There were limits put on their hours. When that was done.
Which location?
Corner of Oak and Leroy.
Oh, 5-star. It's
It was
5-star.
called, I can't remember.
Right across from St. Pat's.
Yeah. Because of the church, because of the school, because of residential around it, they were in that, I was at those meetings and now they're open till 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah, I'll make another.
I mean, so I don't, how good are we? And the point of that is that, and they're fairly good folks, right? They're, how good are we following up on these things?
Mhm.
I mean,
And I know that's putting in a lot, I'm putting on the spot, and there's a lot of, it's not you that has to, you
No, I
know,
get
you're, this is the plan. And it's a good plan, but we implement all of these things, then it's always the follow through with the problem.
No,
Always the follow.
that makes sense. You know, we only have one zoning officer.
who's not aware of something that happened 10 years ago.
Right, but these things do give us the tools so that when an
Yeah.
issue does arise, we have something to cite, you know.
Okay, what would next step be? On this?
I do want to fix the maps. And I do think that for convenience stores, I added D, the facility sells tobacco, vape, and other smoking products. I think that was omitted from the original text that I sent you guys. So I can send the updated maps and the legislation with that text in it. And
Do
then,
you want any suggestions about other spots you might have missed?
yeah, absolutely, yeah, we'll review that also.
Just like there's definitely even more coverage than is what's represented, I think, just for better or worse.
Yeah, I think we were going with the land use codes from the county, which are not always up to date, obviously, so part of it involves just Googling and finding all current locations and making sure we get off locations that close.
Do Robert, Nate, do we want to have more conversation on the convenience store piece?
I'm not crazy about it, but maybe give me a little bit to process everything after this
Okay.
meeting, and I could
Okay.
follow up.
The other question I had was, I don't know if you all are interested in seeing what an amendment to the sign ordinance would look like for the tobacco signage.
I would be interested in seeing that. I think we got a lot of blatantly ugly things out there.
The other municipalities that I found in the state, they typically limit it to forbidding like moving, flashing
Mhm.
signs and things like that. It could be that there's some kind of constitutional thing where they weren't able to really limit tobacco advertising per se.
The county had a push about that years ago, or is there even an ordinance on exterior? It was, I can't remember now, but there was something about exterior advertising in particular.
That there is, I think it was like the village of. I forget what municipality it was, but I think there is one that limits it to interior only. And I don't know if that's been challenged or not. None of the other municipalities had that. But we can look further into it.
If you're amending or proposing an adjustment to the sign ordinance, I would be curious if you'd also be able to represent the efficacy of just simply increasing fines in terms of enforcement. And what I've read on that topic in particular is that it's not impactful. But would be curious what your experience plus research would be.
Okay,
I think there's also some preemptive restrictions because the federal government regulates how tobacco advertising, both on packaging and in retail spaces, can be updated by municipalities. So like there are federal restrictions on how a state or local law can actually change those things. At least I remember that being a thing with packaging. I don't know to what extent it makes sense to retail advertising, but
Okay,
might be something worth.
yeah, if that's accurate, then including it is worth.
okay. So do you all want me to make these changes and come back to planning committee, or would it be a work
Yes,
session
I
for
think
that?
that would be.
Okay,
I'm okay with that.
there is another gas station currently being proposed, but I think it would be allowed. So
Where's that one?
it's on the corner of Prospect and Glenwood, where that Easy Mart is right now. And it's really not an ideal site for a lot of just site plan reasons.
It's like, right,
It's like on that triangle.
there's like,
Yeah.
there's a huge Marabito, like, oh, no, it's down here.
So that used to be Clinton Pharmacy, yes?
No, this is up on Prospect. That's
Oh.
Glenwood and Clinton.
It's right before you turn, like, go up the hill on Glenwood.
It's just tight. It's like a skewed
It's really
intersection.
tight.
I
I have a hard time with that turn as it is.
yeah, so
It could just be me.
Like, is the site
Never
plan come in
presumed to be a
as
good
far as-
driver.
they have not gone yet. They'll be on the next agenda. The town of Dickinson expressed their disapproval. They have a say because they're within 500 feet of their border. I expect that the county planning department and BMTS will have some concerns. I think the planning commission will too, but we haven't gotten there yet, so.
Would you be willing, could you make sure we're looped in on that conversation when it does come in
Sure.
front of, I mean, ideally, it'll pop up on our radars already, but. It's certainly relevant. Okay. Any other discussion, needs, next steps, action items?
Good.
Okay. Do I have to get a motion to adjourn?
I'll give you a motion, sure.
Would anyone like to second Robert's motion?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Hotchkiss. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.